Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. So today we are going to be solving this actual GRE argument essay question, and I have all of the steps listed here, and here is your passage and here is your question. But before we get started on that, let's take a look at something I've just prepared for you guys. So there are basically four main steps that you're going to be needing in every essay that you're going to write for the GRE. First of all, read the main question. Alright, so what do I mean by the main question? This is your main question and this is what you want to read first. Next, you have to read and annotate the argument. So the argument is the big passage that you saw just a few minutes ago. You're going to have to annotate, means comment on the argument a lot. You're going to get a pen and you're going to get a pencil and a paper in the GRE for you to make notes. So what you're going to do is that you're going to find the assumptions in the passage, the argument, the claims in it. You're going to have to find ways to weaken the argument and in what ways could the argument have been made stronger. So while you're reading the passage, the main argument, you're going to have to think of all these things and come up with as many points as you possibly can. So we're going to be doing all of this when we plan for the prompt that I've shown you just a few minutes before. So once you're done finding your points, next step is to plan your essay. So this is a general essay structure. You're going to start off with an introduction. Many body paragraphs. 2 is a little less. I recommend 3 if you can. And finally, you're going to have your conclusion. This is a very general outline. In the GRE, there is no fixed outline. So as long as your essay is logical and it evaluates the argument really well, then you're all good to go. So this is the third step, and finally when you're done writing, what you have to do is check your work. Okay, always leave at least a minute so that you can correct and edit your work. So let's get started here with our very first analyzing the argument topic. So as I said before, what we're going to do is we're going to read the question. So they told us to write a response in which you examine the stated and or unstated assumptions. So this is what we want to know. That this question, it wants us to find the stated and or unstated assumptions in the passage. So I'm just going to highlight that. And it also told us to explain how the argument depends on the assumptions and what the implications are. So what this basically means is that find the assumptions and tell us how the passage here, this is the passage, depends on these assumptions. Like if these assumptions were untrue, then this argument would be completely false. So that's what we're going to be doing. Oh, sorry. So let's get that here. So our question tells us to find the stated and or unstated assumptions. And we also have to prove that the argument without those assumptions is not valid at all. Next, what we have to do is annotate the argument. So this is our argument here. So let's take a read through this. In surveys, Mason City residents rank water sports, swimming, boating, and fishing among their favorite recreational activities. So we don't have to read any further. Your first keyword here is surveys. Whenever you find a mention of surveys in the analytical argument task, you have to make a note because surveys are very important because they are a huge assumption. So our question told us that in surveys, residents of Mason City, they ranked water sports among their favorite recreational activities, but it did not tell us how big was the survey. How many people took part? What percentage of the town took part? What percentage of the city took part? how many questions were in the survey. So you guys understand what I'm doing, right? I took the word survey, which was given in the argument, and I found a lot of questions which just the word survey, it doesn't answer. So in this passage, they should have told us how big the survey was, how many people participated. So we can't rely on this survey because the information given to us is very vague. Okay, so I'm just noting stuff down here, not writing the whole sentence. Next we have, alright, so we've done with this first word. So in surveys, Mason City residents rank water sports. We can also highlight the word residents here. Why am I highlighting this? Because it doesn't tell us how many residents. So in the mention of the word residents, they didn't tell us how many residents. They just assumed that, many residents said that water sports were their favorite activities. That's an assumption, and we don't know whether it's true. Right, so let's move on. Next, it said that the Mason River flowing through the city is rarely used for these pursuits. However, and the city park department devotes little of its budget to maintaining riverside recreational facilities. Alright, so let's just quickly read this. The main point of this passage is that in the survey, the residents have said that these are their favorite activities on the river, but the river is not used for these activities, and they said that the river is not used because the government devotes very little budget. Right then, so what they assumed was that the river is not used because the government gives very little of its budget. So let's read that again. The Mason River flowing through the city is rarely used for these pursuits, which means these activities, because the city park department, which means the government, devotes little of its budget to maintaining the riverside recreational facilities. Right, so this is our assumption that we found in the next sentence. So what questions can you find here from this assumption? The river is not used because the government devotes very little budget. The river could also not be used because it's being used in something else. For example, maybe the river isn't used because, because another sport outside of these three, swimming, boating, and fishing, regularly happens in the river. So nothing about that is mentioned. So directly saying that the river isn't used because the government devotes less budget isn't true, because the river could also be used in something else. So what we're doing here is that we're finding assumptions like the survey, the use of the word residents, this usage of the river, and we're finding points that make this assumption invalid. That is the whole point of the argument essay, that analyze this passage and find the points which, if not true, could make the whole argument invalid. So we're done with this sentence. Next. For years, there have been complaints from residents about the quality of the river's water and the river's smell. Right, so complaints from residents. We do not know which residents. So when they said that complaints from residents, we don't know which residents. We don't know how many residents. We don't know how strongly their complaints were made. How much did they complain? Were the complaints strong? So if the person who wrote this argument just, took the opinion of a single person who said that, oh, I don't like the river, it smells, and the city actually has 20,000, 30,000 residents who don't complain about the river, then, well, this point here, for years there have been complaints from residents, this is invalid. So again, I took a bit from the passage and I found a reason which could make it invalid. Let's move on. In response, the state has recently announced plans to clean up Mason River. Use of the river for water sports is therefore sure to increase. So what they basically said here was that if the state cleans up the river, then water sports will increase. That's the assumption that was made. So let's write that down. If the state cleans up the river, then the use of water sports will increase. This is an assumption. However, we don't know that how many of the residents of the city actually want to do water sports. They didn't say anything about that. So let's take a look here. They said that the residents rank water sports among their favorite recreational activities, but they didn't say anything about the residents wanting to actually, take part in the recreational activities, these sports. So even if the river is clean, many people may not come to participate. So this is a very big flaw in the argument, that you're saying that the river is unclean, which is why no one is taking part in the river sport activities. But we actually don't even know how many people want to take part in these activities. So as you can see that this passage here, it's just, it's full of flaws, huge flaws. Finally, we have the next sentence. The city government should therefore, for that reason, devote more money in this year's budget to riverside recreational facilities. So the conclusion of their argument was that the government should give more money to the budget for these sporting activities. And finally, what we can say is that they assumed government giving more money to the activities will increase use of the river for them. That was the assumption, but this could also be a huge waste of the budget. Huge waste of the budget. Because we don't know that giving more budget to these activities, we don't know that it will increase participation. Because again, in our previous point, we don't know how many people want to participate. We are not sure why people aren't using the river for these activities right now. We also don't know whether it's going to be used for something else. So our conclusion can basically say that because of all of these reasons, the government giving more money to the activities may just basically be a huge waste. Alright then, so we found 6 major flaws in our passage, and I've just explained exactly how I found them. I analyzed each sentence. Remember this word surveys. Whenever it comes up, you'll know that you have to say something about surveys. It's a very common issue. And our question told us to find the stated and or unstated assumptions. We found them all. So what's left is basically to plan your essay. So basically planning your essay will mean you'll need an intro, you'll need body paragraphs, and you will need a conclusion. So in this video, we've discussed just how to annotate your essay. And in the next video, we're going to be taking a look at a solution that I've written from these points. And I'm going to show you what I've written in the body paragraphs now. So thank you for listening, and stay tuned for the next video where I'm going to show you the sample answer.